name's Relentless. Today I get to talk to DeFi Naley from Beethoven X team. I really appreciate you joining us today. Super excited to talk to you guys about everything that you're working on and everything that you guys have been building, through that little bear and then into the bull. So I really appreciate you coming on and giving me your time. Would you like to go ahead and kind of introduce yourself, kind of give your background, your role on the team and all that?
Yeah, sure thing. It's a pleasure to be here. You've been killing it with the podcast and interviews recently. As far as myself, DeFi Nally, I work on the Beethoven X team, marketing and business development. My kind of background, I guess, is kind of a bit unique. I imagine maybe some people would kind of know me just as Nally from creating content on Twitter. But basically, I was doing an aerospace degree last year, and whilst I was doing my degree, I was also kind of becoming more and more fascinated by DeFi. I mean, I've always been interested in the kind of crypto realm, but the past, last year, I think it was kind of around this time last year, maybe a few months before, maybe in the kind of December, I just became fascinated by DeFi. And started researching everything I possibly could about it, and stumbled across Phantom and kind of became fascinated with Phantom and all the projects building in Phantom, and started creating content, started just basically writing threads explaining how the technology works, kind of writing some project overviews, bridge overviews, and then kind of got chatting with a lot of the people in the space, and spoke to some of the Beethoven team members. And then basically everything kind of fell into place, which I started creating content for Beethoven, and then actually got hired full time for Beethoven in August last year. And it's been a bit of a whirlwind adventure since. It's been super exciting. I was always kind of very impressed by the Beethoven team, and since getting to know everyone that's working there, I've become even more impressed. But yeah, I'm not a developer. Maybe can do a tiny bit of code, but nowhere near up to the standard that's required. I just know how the tech works and can explain how it works. That's about my skills in the Beethoven X team.
Well, I think that's really all you could really want from your, true marketing and business development guys, just to understand it. I feel you. I can't code anything. And I even worked in some networking stuff back in the day, and some of the things I did in the military, but I'm more of a radio guy. So you try to show me code and, my brain will kind of shut off. So leave it to the experts.
Yeah, exactly. There's points where it's like, should I learn how to code smart contracts? But it's like the amount of time it's going to take me to get even like up to scratch in the tiniest possibility is, I just don't have the time to do it. So I'm just impressed by anyone who can. Yeah,
that's its own full-time gig. So, but super cool. It's, and yeah, I agree. Super great team. Beats is one of the first things I ever bought when I got into DeFi. Everyone, but that was back when it was like $1. And started following the team and got super into what you guys are doing, and got super excited about all the things you guys have coming. So that's kind of one of the things I was really excited to get you on here to talk about. So first, let's kind of talk a little bit about your move to Optimism. I know you guys had a great January for positive TVL growth, kind of all around, both in Phantom and in Optimism. We'll kind of get to Phantom here in a bit, just to kind of give a background. But what benefits are you guys seeing since you moved over to Optimism so far?
Yeah, perfect. Let's give it another go. So I mean, the main benefit from our side of deploying on Optimism has been to kind of further align this partnership and bring closer this partnership with Balancer, which has been really cool to see. We're deployed there in partnership with Balancer, so they actually utilize their incentive program. So the emissions on the DEX are dictated by VBAL holders rather than FBeats holders. So we've kind of, it's been the first time we've officially moved from just a friendly fork on Phantom to actually like official partners with the Balancer. And obviously Balancer is this very prestigious, renowned kind of DeFi giant. So it's been awesome to kind of further this alignment. And then besides just the kind of building a closer relationship, there's also obviously deploying onto a whole new chain to explore. Obviously Ethereum is the kind of father of DeFi, if you will. So actually being on a promising layer 2 is definitely going to be beneficial too. So yeah, that's kind of like a high level view of the main benefits from deploying on Optimism.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, layer 2s, have tons of incentives on their own, right? And just being on Ethereum, unless you already have a ton of money on Ethereum, is not very attractive itself to be over there. So, so very cool. And then, kind of on the same subject within Optimism, right? So what are the major roadblocks that you guys have kind of seen so far, right? So I know that the vast majority of the TVL for Beats is still over on Phantom, and in comparison is super low on Optimism. So what kind of issues have you guys had gaining like real traction over there so far, besides the kind of bear market that we went through?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It's interesting actually. Like this month, this January, the TVL on Optimism has actually increased quite substantially. I think it's up nearly around like 60%. But I guess a predominant part of it has been our incentive program, as we're kind of deployed with Balancer, and it's like VBAL, which is the emission token. We've taken a different route. I guess one of the things that is most notable with Optimism is all the teams apply for a grant, or most teams apply for a grant, and then kind of they bootstrap their liquidity with this grant. But we kind of took a unique approach on Optimism, where we actually said that for every single dollar of Optimism that we would admit as incentives, we would pair with protocol fees generated. So there's been kind of this initial kind of stage of growth where it's been a little bit slower, I suppose, because you have to actually kind of, well, we bootstrapped initially with some Beats emissions, but then there's this period of kind of slowly building momentum where you've got to generate enough protocol fees to actually pair these with Optimism. So we were given a 500,000 Optimism grant, and since we deployed back in, I can't remember the actual date, was it July? I think it was July. We've actually only net spent about 75,000 op. So we still have around 425,000 op. Optimism tokens, and about 35 million TVL. We also have had recently, there was some vulnerabilities that were disclosed for Balancer for a few pools. There was no issue, there was no funds lost, there was no exploits, but we had to shift the pools over and move them across. So kind of this initial stage of bootstrapping and building up enough protocol fees and moving pools around has disrupted it a little bit. But we're literally just at the period where we're about to deploy these new pools, and we're gaining a lot more traction, a lot more TVL, and the momentum's kind of shifting in our favor. So we're pretty excited to see how the next few months unfold.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I saw the stuff about the vulnerability, and you guys handled that so quickly, and nothing to, there's some people who as soon as they see vulnerability or exploit of any kind, they'll jump out without kind of giving a due process. But I mean, you guys, that was a pretty rapid response, and that obviously expect nothing less from the quality of your team over there. So, but yeah, very cool. And you are experiencing rapid growth over there on Optimism, as as Optimism itself is experiencing the rapid growth as well. So definitely very promising for you guys. So, and then, all right, very cool. So let's kind of talk just a little bit about some of the stuff on Phantom, and then we'll kind of get into really what you guys are doing now with what's coming. Obviously, a successful January on Phantom, performed better than all other native Phantom projects. But kind of a couple questions that I have really here are, so Beats is tends to move in sync with the price of Phantom. What are your kind of thoughts about how you guys, get Beats to break away from the price movement of Phantom, and kind of get people to shift that mindset narrative of you guys being tied directly in with the price there?
Yeah, it's a great question. I guess kind of the one of the main reasons it's so closely tied with Phantom is a lot of protocols, they will have like single staking for their native token, and they kind of have this as their governance. Whereas Beats actually is in 80-20 BPT with Phantom, so like our predominant, almost like a full liquidity is actually tied with Phantom. So it does kind of perform alongside it, but then it's a great question: how do you kind of outperform it and not just be tied with it? And I think it just comes down to the actual technology and what's kind of coming out. Obviously, you hold a token because it provides some sort of benefit. You can gain something from it, and it has some power to control something. And for Beats token, that's you can enter at the moment the Fidelio Duetto pool and create F Beats, and then you can vote on the gauge vote. And you can earn bounties for doing so. And recently, actually, we've had a few changes to the gauge vote, which have been pretty interesting, where we've introduced a cap on pools where if they don't generate more than 2% of the protocol fees for the previous month, they will be limited to 1% of the vote. And initially, it kind of came out and everyone was not so confident in the kind of strategy, as your initial perception may be, okay, that's going to stop a lot of teams from kind of bootstrapping liquidity. But what it's actually done is it's allowed the team to kind of speak with these other protocols and actually offer advice and work with them on what could actually be the best performing kind of pools to create. So, and it's been interesting, like an example is the Oath pool. There was this spotty OT pool, which was an 80-20, it was Oath ETH. And while it was an amazing pool, it wasn't performing that great on Phantom just purely because there's not much volatility for Ethereum on Phantom. So they actually worked with the Beethoven team, specifically the music directors, which are the kind of area of the DAO, and that's kind of part of their roles. And they redeployed this new Oath. It was an Oath 70 USDC was 15%, and Phantom was another 15%. And since they've actually redeployed this, they've kind of gone on to generate the third highest fees already of the previous month. So coming back to your kind of original question, it's like, how do you give Beats more value? And Beats becomes more value when the job it's doing becomes more valuable. And recently the changes with the gauge have not only made it more, one of the big areas of the change was actually increasing the control that F Beats directs to. Instead of being 30%, it's now 50%. So there's kind of steps we're taking for the actual utility of Beats to increase, like the actual power it has over Beethoven X as a protocol, and we're kind of shifting more to this being decided by our holders and by our governance holders. And then obviously, I assume we are going to touch on it in a bit, but we've got Reliquary coming as well, which is an exciting piece of tech.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. Yeah, definitely love the adjusted approach there of giving of more control to the community with the F Beats emissions there and the power of voting. So I think that's definitely a good incentive. And then yes, we are absolutely about to dive into Reliquary, which is I've hosted Beavis before, before they had all the details out about this. So obviously very cool to see you guys also launching it too, because there's just so many benefits here. But kind of before we get into that, is how did you guys kind of form your relationship with the Byte Masons? What were the synergies there that made it so enticing for you guys to work together?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the Byte Masons are a very talented group of developers, a team. There's a whole collection of very talented people. And I think the Phantom community is pretty unique, and the people building in the Phantom ecosystem are pretty unique, where everyone does seem to get along and everyone does seem to kind of discuss the space, discuss strategies, and I guess the original kind of building blocks for kind of building this kind of partnership a bit closer was boosted pools. Boosted pools are quite an interesting mechanism where not only can they provide lots of benefits for users as earning extra yield and just kind of a more sustainable yield, but they actually can kind of build a few more partnerships in the space because you're essentially routing liquidity to another protocol. So not only you're benefiting users, but you're also benefiting another protocol. So we have utilized lots of Reaper Farm booster pools on Optimism. We've got new booster pools that are coming both on Optimism and on Phantom. So there was this kind of initial routing liquidity with them. We've seen what they've done. They do some very exciting things. They've obviously got lots of exciting things coming with the kind of Oath ecosystem. And then I guess the other big kind of driver of our kind of partnership has been Reliquary. Kind of just at the time that they released Reliquary contracts and kind of exactly how it works was when we were kind of analyzing what was the future for FBeats. We did originally kind of plan to do locking for FBeats, but as we kind of looked into it more and more, we realized there was actually quite a few shortfalls that we thought could be improved, and Reliquary kind of presented itself at the perfect time. And we've kind of been, building together and building closer ever since. It's an exciting partnership, and I think we're all kind of rooting for each other. It's a cool place to be.
Yeah, definitely two really good teams to work together. As I was saying earlier, I hosted Beavis a while ago, and kind of got a little brief intro on Reliquary. This is before they had really released a lot of the details. So obviously to see you guys adopt it as well is huge. I'm a big believer in both what you guys are doing and what the Byte Masons are doing over there with Oath and everything. So, super exciting to see that work together. So, all right, so cool. Let's kind of launch into the Reliquary integration. All right, so the big thing that Reliquary really solves, that as advertised, is the mercenary capital problem. From the Beats perspective, what kind of effects did you guys feel that you were seeing from mercenary capital? Do you think that was something that was affecting you more so than just the typical bear market? Is that why you guys were super interested in kind of integrating this?
Yeah, I mean, I think mercenary capital is kind of an industry-wide kind of phenomenon. And I mean, more than industry-wide, capital is mercenary. When it comes down to it, capital is going to go where it's treated best. And obviously you look for protocols which are secure and battle tested and have good teams which you believe in. But a lot of the time, if something is offering you that little bit more, then you're going to go somewhere else. And I think it's an inherent kind of emotion that people look for a bit more. So I think it's an interesting kind of concept, and it obviously does affect Beethoven as a protocol. I think it affects every protocol where capital kind of moves around. But upon kind of seeing the dynamic of Reliquary, it's is there a way to solve it rather than just having to just lock someone's capital? The tokenomics have become such a so synonymous with all kind of protocols. It's okay, there's this capital which is going to leave, we're going to lose TVL. How can we kind of mitigate that? And the option has arose, okay, we'll just force people to lock their capital away. Some of them are 4 years, some of them are a year, some of them are less. But it was something we weren't too keen to do. We actually have a social scientist on the team, Josie. She's really great and kind of actually committed a kind of study and looking into the effects of locking, actually interviewing people, getting their emotions. And it was interesting. It was around the time of the lunar crash. And obviously for people who are aware within the space, who have millions of dollars of capital, then locking away a small portion of that isn't too serious. But for most people don't really want to lock their capital away for crazy amounts of times. So we thought Reliquary presented itself as quite an interesting solution to persuade people to keep their capital rather than just lock it away. And yeah, we're excited to see how it plans out. I think with anything new coming in, is you can have all kind of theories on how it's going to work out, but once it's actually released, it's a whole different ballgame. But yeah, it's an interesting approach to solve it, and we think it's the best approach currently.
Yeah, agreed. As you read through it, and everybody, there's a really great Medium that they posted that breaks down everything Reliquary that I highly recommend reading, that you can find on the Beethoven X page. So let's kind of talk a little bit about why how some of this stuff works, specifically the alternative to locking, as far as the the maturity aspect here with the maturity curve, and how this plays into mob eats. So do you want to kind of talk about that, just kind of how that model works?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, I guess the kind of underlying premise of the Reliquary contract is that you have a position, and you basically take this position. This can be a BPT, an LP token. You deposit it into this Reliquary contract, and by depositing into this Reliquary contract, you, instead of just earning emissions as a factor of your ratio in the pool, you'll actually earn your emissions as a factor of the ratio in the pool, but also the time you spent into the pool. And the time is kind of split across into these, they call them maturity tranches, but they're essentially just different levels. So the time requirement is in seconds. So if you enter a position, as soon as you enter a position, it would take this block timestamp. And then as time moves forward, as it always does, your seconds will increase, and basically the protocols can set specific time requirements to reach different levels. And then as you hit each of these different levels, what the underlying maturity does is it boosts your underlying position to basically an increased level, and that boost basically increases your ratio across the pools. Yeah, we have put this Medium article, which maybe explains it a bit simpler than me explaining it over actually talking about it. But the underlying premise is, instead of just holding a position and earning it based on how much you earn of the pool, you will earn rewards as a function of the time you've been in the pool as well. And protocols can adapt and build specific maturity profiles, specific maturity tranches, that you can kind of level up and boost your position further and further to earn more rewards and more voting power. That's kind of a basic view of it. I hope that wasn't too confusing.
No, it makes sense. Yeah, when I lost you there for a second, I was telling everybody about the article that's posted on your page, and how well it breaks everything down. But yeah, super makes a lot of sense what you're saying. And then kind of how this plays into so every I think it's super intriguing how this model, how it's broken down, right? So you can increase maturity on multiple positions, right? And it's obviously annotated through an NFT. And then, so I was wondering if you could kind of, talk just a little bit about that, explain to everyone how, they can open one position, and, if they were to contribute to a current position, how that affects the maturity from that current position, as opposed to just opening a new position. And then also how they're able to then, there's kind of a gamification aspect that can be played here, where you can take a more mature position and roll it into a newer position, and and all the benefits there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. So I guess apart from maturity, one of the key things about Reliquary is, rather than when staking a position, you getting this kind of stake position, which is tied to your wallet address. The position is actually tied to this NFT. And obviously with NFTs, you can transfer them, you can send them to different wallets. It kind of opens up a lot of opportunities. And besides just kind of sending them to other wallets, if the actual capital is tied to a specific NFT, you can obviously list on secondary marketplaces like you kind of see with V NFT or V NFTs at the moment. And then also if you have this underlying capital, there is the possible in the future to actually take out kind of loans on the collateral that's within them. So there's a lot of opportunities that opens up. But back to your question about kind of maturity impacts, when the underlying kind of concept of reliquary is based on time, and how long you've been in a position, whenever you add to your position, you are kind of manipulating this timestamp in a way. Like obviously the entry of your position, it technically goes back to zero, because as soon as you enter that position, the time from entering that is zero. But rather than just kind of resetting your whole position at zero and maturity at zero, it takes kind of a weighted average of your position. So say you had 1,000 LP tokens in your position, but you only deposit 10, you're going to have a very small maturity impact. Whereas if you have 1,000 LP tokens and you deposit 900, you're going to have a very big impact, and your boost you get and your maturity is going to come down quite a lot. And as you say about these kind of gamification mechanisms, it kind of goes more technical and maybe more than what the average user would do. And actually kind of the merging and the splitting of the positions is something that won't be on the front end for my beats. It will be purely contract interaction, whereas you'll just have to go into the actual Explorer and interact with the contract. But you can, yeah, as you say, you can split them, you can merge them. There is some gamification mechanisms where you could technically boost the maturity of your NFT if you have one with a high position and one with a small position. For those people who really like getting into the technicals, there's a lot of avenues to take. But you can also just mint as many NFTs as you want. You don't have to take a maturity impact if you don't want.
Yeah, very cool. And then kind of, a question that I have there is, so if you have, because it reaches maximum maturity at 11 weeks, correct?
Yeah, for the Mabeats, it's 100% maturity at 11 weeks.
So if you were to roll that into a newer NFT with less maturity, are you then able to? Does that boost all the rewards and voting power on the new one, as opposed to rolling? Obviously, if you roll a newer one into an older one, it limits it. But does it boost it if you do the opposite?
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of the merge function. If you have one that's at maximum maturity, you could boost the other one basically.
Okay, and then once you boost that one, you're obviously then, accruing all those rewards. You can continue. It may have reached maximum maturity of 11 weeks, but then you can roll it into a newer one and continue to boost on top and on top and on top, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, once you're at maximum maturity, you will continue earning the highest amount of rewards possible. So if you have like a big position at maximum maturity, you could just keep that position and earn maximum rewards. But as you say, yeah, you could just boost it up if you wanted to. If you wanted to kind of get into the gamification, you could boost a smaller one up. Yeah, it's a great thought. It would be really interesting to see how people play it. Actually, I'm excited to see it unfold.
Yeah, me too. And that's kind of what I was thinking. I let an NFT mature all the way to 11 weeks. Roll it into a new one, kind of compound that position, and see how much I can maximize that after each position has kind of reached maximum maturity, and how really how big you can get that, because that is obviously a great incentive to stick around if you start to see those rewards compounding just exponentially, kind of sort of. So very interesting as I was kind of drawing it out as I was working through this.
Yeah, exactly. It's exciting. I think a lot of people will get into the technicals and be able to game it in a way which will be fun to see. it kind of opens up a few more doors to earning emissions and earning voting power rather than just the regular, which is exciting.
Yeah, agreed. All right, so cool. So let's kind of transition, kind of into the rewards distribution here from these positions. All right, so you guys advertise it as the, your reliquary beat streamer contract. Do you want to kind of to break that down, how that works in conjunction with, I guess, kind of in conjunction with the Master Chef, I guess, is really how it'll work. But do you want to kind of talk about that?
Yeah, sure. I'll give my understanding of it. Obviously, I'm not a developer, but this specific kind of part was written by Franz, one of our devs. But the kind of underlying thing is the Master Chef basically emits tokens, and as we're kind of in this immutable world, when Beats was created, the Master Chef was set as the owner of the Beats contract, so it will continuously emit Beats tokens, and there's no way we can stop it from emitting Beats tokens. It's an immutable world. You build code and it will carry on doing that function. So then the question is, how do you actually allow Reliquary, which is a separate contract, to emit the beats? So we basically had to build this Reliquary beat streamer, which basically is kind of sits as an intermediary between the Master Chef contract and the Reliquary, because the Master Chef actually emits beats per block, and the Reliquary streamer emits beats per second. So this Reliquary beat streamer not only kind of brings them across from the farms to another farm, but it also, yeah. So I mean, the kind of underlying thing that the Master Chef emits beats tokens, and it's the only contract that can. So we need to basically build this intermediary between the Master Chef and the Reliquary, and the Reliquary beat streamer is this contract that does this. Master Chef emits beats per block, and the Reliquary emits oh my god, I can't say my words. Reliquary emits beats per second. So it basically just kind of adapts the flow of beats from the usual farm across to the Reliquary naturally. It's a very simple contract, but it allows us to be able to use the Reliquary after having already implemented the Master Chef. That's about it.
All right, very cool, very cool. Let's see. What was I going to say here? Yeah, so, all right, so, sorry. Okay, so very cool. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense with the rewards distribution, and then, the boosts based off maturity level and all that different stuff. So appreciate the, kind of breakdown. And like I said, everyone, if you want to read the article, it gives a really detailed kind of breakdown of everything that goes into this. So then a couple different questions about the NFTs, right? So typically when you see kind of a NFT position, users are able to, they call them liquid, right? But they, have to be sold on the market at, sometimes like, discount and stuff. But from, my understanding here is that you don't have to sell these at a discount, right? You can actually sell these at a premium, right? Do you want to, kind of break that down? How users are able to, how they're able to sell it at that premium is, and how that works.
Yeah, of course. So as you say, kind of the NFTs or kind of any financial NFT you see at the moment kind of tends to trend at a discount. It seems like on average across the market it's around a 10% discount, just purely from this kind of reduction in liquidity. You can't sell it whenever you want, but you have the possibility to sell a locked position, and you pay a 10% premium for that. But where kind of the Reliquary differs is that you're actually holding a position which earns more rewards based on time. So if you've held a position for a long time, you are basically providing something to someone which they can basically time travel. You're basically the premium that we expect you'll pay is the premium you would spend to skip time. It's quite an interesting premise. It's like you're not just paying to have a position, you're also paying to kind of almost time travel through that position to earn the rewards that you could be earning if you were 2 weeks in the future, 3 weeks in the future, 10 weeks in the future. So everyone expects there'll be a premium, as I imagine you would pay to kind of time travel into the future. But you still may be able to find some that kind of trade at a discount, people who want to get out really quickly. It'll be interesting. There has been this market for kind of buying undervalued VNFTs and then basically holding them and selling them. So especially with Reliquary, if you manage to find some that are undervalued, then I imagine it could be quite profitable. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, agreed. I think a great example there is, people buying liquid driver VNFTs as price depreciated and people were bailing out. I know a few people who accumulated a ton of them and have been able to kind of sell those on the secondary market after, as things have gone up for massive profit. But being able to potentially sell at a premium or just sell at its current value, I think is something that will attract a lot of people and a lot of incentivize people to hold, knowing that they can get out and and mostly be whole. So very cool. All right, and then so kind of transitioning here, still within kind of the Reliquary things is kind of the effects on governance, right? We see a lot of talks about governance and new models for governance and everything like that. How does this kind of factor into your view of where you want governance in the protocol to be?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting conversation, governance. It's kind of been evident this past year that there's been a lot of protocols that have been controlled via governance and by whales especially. It's like, as I kind of said before, if you're locking tokens to gain voting power, the people that have ample liquidity and ample capital don't really mind locking it away, so they can very quickly gain quite a lot of governance power. What kind of changes with Reliquary and what changes with the governance power with Mobit specifically is that you don't just lock your position for a max duration and then gain max governance voting power. You actually have to stay in your position for 11 weeks to gain maximum voting power. And whereas at the moment, 100 FBeats would be worth like 100 votes, you actually would start at the beginning with very few votes. So 100 FBeats now would only be worth about 4 votes. And then 100 FBeats in week 7 would be worth about 50 votes. And then 100 FBeats in a week 11 would be worth 100 votes. It would be 1-to-1. So you have to stay in for this duration to actually get those votes. So I guess it's what we're aiming to do is actually the people that are willing to stay and believe in the protocol and believe on what we're building are these people that are actually going to stay in the position rather than just lock their kind of capital away straight away and then be able to vote. But it's going to be the people that actually prove that they kind of believe what they're doing from actually staying the time, not just at the offset kind of gaining it by just locking away, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Really incentivizes, long-term protocol health and growth and being involved. So I'm interested to see it play out as people realize the benefits of letting their positions gain maturity and seeing how high those rewards can get, especially once we see what we talked about earlier, when you reach that maximum maturity and you roll these NFTs into newer ones and continue to build that position and see the benefits of the rewards for governance there and all the things that you're able to do. So I'm super, obviously, like you said, very interesting conversation, and I'm super intrigued to see how some of these kind of models play out, especially, with the introduction of Reliquary and, the kind of effects that's going to have. So appreciate you kind of digging into that a little bit. All right. So I think, outside of, what everyone can go in here and read in the article to really get a full understanding, which if you really wanted to talk the full reliquary model, it's probably going to take a whole lot longer than an hour. So I'm not going to ask you to break down the entire ins and outs. People can go read about it, no problem. So a couple different things that you guys are doing outside. One thing I wanted to kind of ask you to touch on is you tweet about it specifically a few days ago as the most efficient market for LSDs. All right. Did you hear my question there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry, I heard all that. It was just kicked me out, but I heard what you said.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I was just going to kind of wondering if you could expand a little bit on what you guys are doing for LSDs.
Yeah, of course, everyone's favorite topic, LSDs. Yeah, liquid state derivatives. It's obviously, especially with kind of the Shanghai and Ethereum at the moment, there's been a lot of hype around liquid state derivatives. And it's definitely going to be something which is going to grow. I think it's become evident that rather than just holding kind of the base token, you should hold the token which is naturally kind of appreciating from staking rewards. So kind of the underlying balance of technology is kind of primed for these liquid state derivative tokens. And furthermore than that, it's kind of just primed for interest-bearing tokens in general. Anything that kind of generates revenue and flows back into the token, Balance has got the underlying tech to kind of deliver for it. And it comes down to multiple things to do with Balance of technology. Like the most kind of notable thing about Balancer is that it utilizes this vault, which is this kind of overarching hub of liquidity for all tokens. So kind of any token which is added into Balancer, whether that's Beethoven or Balancer specifically, instantly kind of has this route between all the liquidity on the platform. And obviously with liquid state derivatives, they want to just increase their exposure to as many tokens as possible and as many assets as possible. But the main thing which actually makes Balancer kind of unique and makes holding your liquid state derivatives on Balancer worthwhile is something called this rate provider, which essentially most tokens on other dexes, you have a liquid state derivative. Like you have, let's say you have ETH, and say you have Wrapstake ETH or Rocket Pool ETH. Obviously, Rocket Pool ETH trades at a premium compared to ETH. It doesn't trade one-to-one, but when you actually have it in lots of other dexes, it's just kind of utilizes something called a stable pool, and the asset will actually trade one-to-one. And essentially, this discrepancy in how the asset should be trading, the yield that you should be earning as a liquidity provider is actually kind of being leached out every time arbitrage traders come in. There's this discrepancy which they can profit on, and when they profit on, you kind of miss out on it. But this rate provider just automatically queries the blockchain and provides the correct rate. So if you're holding your assets, if you're holding your liquid state derivative assets, if you're holding interest-bearing assets on Balancer technology, it will automatically update to the correct rate, and your yield won't actually be leaked out, which is one pretty powerful thing. And then to take it kind of one step further is you obviously have boosted pools on Balancer too. So it's kind of the question is, why would you hold like Rocket Pool and ETH in a pool when you could hold Rocket Pool and boosted ETH? You could wrap some of that ETH liquidity, send it to Aave, send it to Reaper Farm, send it to Granary, and generate an additional yield. And then you can go even further. Like Balancer has just released, it was super cool actually. It was like a Frax ETH, Rocket Pool ETH, Wrapstake ETH tri-pool, which is really interesting. But essentially, when it comes down to it, you have an interconnected hub of liquidity that can kind of seamlessly route over with very cheap gas. And it also ensures that liquidity providers are always getting the actual correct yield and getting what they should be getting. And then actually we can boost it even further. We can actually pair it with assets which are also interest bearing. So it's going to be quite interesting. I think Balancer technology is kind of going to become this interest-bearing hub, this booster pool hub, this liquid state derivative hub of DeFi. And as all this kind of hype generates and more liquidity flows into these tokens, I think we're going to see a lot of that liquidity flow into Balancer tech, both Balancer and Beethoven.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. I think something that's also kind of going to have to be paid attention to in certain corners is kind of what regulations are going to do to some of this stuff, and the effects that they're going to have there. But I mean, the potential for revenue just from that, especially using the Balancer tech, is massive. So, and I know, if I'm not mistaken, I think you guys were the first to actually introduce the Balancer tech to your pools, right?
As in kind of like this underlying boosted pool for, I think, yeah, Beethoven was the first to boost a liquid staked pool, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, very cool. So, and then I'm kind of interested to see how that plays out. With the the liquidity machine that Reliquary is. With the liquid staking as well. Kind of a whole lot just kind of being put there together that just has a ton of opportunity, and a ton of future value. So very cool what you guys are working on, and everything that's being built there. So all right, so the last kind of things that I want to just talk about, we covered Reliquary pretty well, what you guys are doing there and all the incentives there is just really what's kind of your roadmap going forward outside of Reliquary. I know you had mentioned that you guys were looking for another chain and you found Optimism. Are you guys thinking about any kind of further moves towards anything else? Or are you guys pretty happy with Optimism and and Phantom? And then also, what kind of other partnerships are you guys looking at right now, or maybe about to announce, if any?
Yeah, of course. I guess like for the past few months, there's been a huge focus on Reliquary, and it's still kind of coming out. It's coming out next Monday, not next Monday, sorry, next Wednesday, 12 p.m. UTC, which is super exciting for that to kind of come out. So a big part of the work has been on that, and then kind of going forward, we have a whole new generation of boosted pools that will be coming out. These will originally be first come on Optimism, and secondly they will come to Phantom, and this will kind of restructure where our kind of core pools lies and where our core liquidity lies. Boosted pools kind of become a bit of a focal point for us going forward. As I kind of said with LSTs, there's this huge benefit as being kind of the best place to host these assets, and I think it's going to become a big focal point moving forward. As far as other chains, we're open to deploying on other chains, but it has to fit. It has to be the right place to go. We're not. Yeah, definitely. The chain has to be the right fit. It has to be somewhere which is going to suit us, and it has to be somewhere that we fully believe in, and we can come and provide a great experience, and we can add the technology to the chain. It also has to be somewhere we don't want to compete with Balancer. We're working kind of in line with Balancer, so we're not going to deploy somewhere where Balancer is kind of already deployed. But we are kind of actively speaking to other chains. So we will see what the future holds. And then kind of besides deploying on new chains, besides working on boosted pools, one thing that is in the pipeline, the Balancer specifically have been working on, is managed pools, which are quite an interesting piece of technology. They're kind of this shining example of programmable liquidity. This phrase, kind of programmable liquidity, is kind of chucked around quite often. But the actual kind of underlying premise of programmable is something which kind of dynamically shifts and dynamically changes. I was speaking to someone from Balancer the other day, and they gave a great explanation of like a robot. Like programmable liquidity is, you have this robot and it moves and it's programmed. It does a specific task. It changes. And essentially, this is what managed pools are. They allow this whole new level of creativity. where you can set specific parameters and specific controllers to manage something like treasuries. It can be, yeah, the kind of options are pretty exciting. So we'll see how that unfolds. And then it's just continued work on kind of the front end, the back end, the SOR. There's lots of tech at Balancer, at Beethoven. The underlying Balancer technology we're kind of constantly working on, lots of things going on behind the scenes. And then there is also a lot of work going on the marketing, trying to forge new partnerships and kind of build a bit more of a community interaction and a community kind of gamification system to actually inspire the community to create some content. I think there's a lot of technology which is overlooked and missed just because of how flexible Balancer technology is. So if we can get the community to actually start kind of showcasing what it can do, I think it's going to be a very promising future.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm in the managed pools thing. You know, there's a few projects that are working on some of this stuff. I've talked to a couple of them, and it's very exciting to kind of see how that plays out. So definitely watching that as well. So yeah, so very cool. I that's kind of really it. I think we covered everything over our throughout our Twitter rug space here. But it just like to leave you kind of whatever last message you kind of want to put out there to everyone that's listening.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for having me. Apologies for the mishap and the timing, and that Twitter space had to constantly rug us. But yeah, guys, if you're interested in finding out anything more about Beethoven, we put out a lot of content. We kind of break everything down as simply as possible. I think Balancer technology is the most overlooked technology in the space. I think it is primed for the future. I think it is going to be utilized in a whole lot of more ways than people first think off the bat. And it's not just this weighted pool. There's a lot coming. And I think the next few months at Beethoven, specifically with Reliquary and a lot of the stuff we're kind of building with boosted pools and community growth, it's going to be an exciting few months. So if you haven't kind of explored Beethoven, then join the Discord, kind of read the Medium publication, send messages. We're always open to chat. We're always open to help. But yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it. It'll take me a little bit of time. Generally I screen record this from a different computer, but so I can throw it up immediately. But I'll download all this stuff from Twitter and kind of get it all cut and edited so that it flows. And then I'll send you that link once I get it up on YouTube. So, but yeah, really appreciate your time and look forward to everything that you guys have coming.
Yeah, awesome, man. Honestly, thank you so much. Look forward to seeing the edited version without all the dropouts.
Yeah, I'll get all that cut out. Don't worry. So.
Awesome. Yeah, have a great day. Enjoy yourself.
Yeah, you as well.
Yeah. Ciao,
all right. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in. Really appreciate your time. And if you're hearing this on YouTube for the first time, hit that like and subscribe button to help us expand our reach. And we'll see you next time.